Check, check. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. So look, why are we doing this? I think it's important on a generational investment for which city taxpayers will pay more than a county taxpayer, for example, that you have a formal say in your money, okay? Now folks will say, well, sounds like a redo. No, it's not a redo. If you remember, November 2025, that was about the county, right? That was about the county's $311 million contribution. Allowing a vote in November for city taxpayers, I think is important for a couple of reasons, right? One, a city taxpayer, you will pay a couple of times, okay? As a city taxpayer, you will pay toward the county's $311 million contribution because, right, a city taxpayer is in the county, so you will pay toward that. Secondly, you will pay toward the city's $489 million contribution, okay? And we know, as was described, there will, at least in the first infrastructure bond, which is estimated to be 220 to 250 million, that's part of the infrastructure bond that the city will have, right? So you will also pay toward that. So to be very clear, a city taxpayer is in for at least 800 million when you just think about the city and the county's contribution. That's nothing to say to even what the amount is going to be for the infrastructure. Okay, and that's why I think it's important that you have a formal say. For context and what I've heard from neighbors, the plan is different than what we were talking about in November, right? There is not a land bridge anymore, right? There is also no longer on the table, as a result of moving the Saws chilled water plant, the expense of that, there's no longer going to be this 1,000-room hotel, which is important because when we think about the state's contribution to this, it relies on hotel sales tax. And if you don't have a 1,000-room hotel there, then that's a big contribution that is not there. Okay, so those two things I think are significant changes. What I've also heard, people are not shy about stopping me at HEB. What I've also heard is like, hey, you know, it would have been nice to know that we were owed money before the vote. And so, top of mind for folks, as I call, you know, my neighbors, and please don't take offense, normal ass people, consider things like the difficulty and the delay with the money that was owed as a result of not bringing the MLS team here. And so, you know, as they said, like, look how hard it was to get 2.5. We should maybe be judicious about, you know, what we're signing ourselves up for. And I think that's fair. I think when you also look at the economic environment, it has changed. It has changed, has it not? Last November, we were not talking about raising property taxes. Now we're looking at doing that once, potentially twice. Once to close the budget gap, which is $158 million. And secondly, to increase the bond capacity, right? Which right now we know is going to be now even less than $600 million. So, of course, you know, say nothing of inflation and other things, but the economic environment has changed. And I think, again, as I talk to neighbors, this is top of mind for folks. We didn't get into a $158 million deficit overnight, right? Those were kind of decisions that were made over time. And so I am in no way critical of neighbors that are trying to ask questions and be judicious about long-term investments given the financial situation that we're in. And I think that's fair to ask. Okay, so I laid out a couple of things there. I mean, at the end of the day, I just think it's also really important that city taxpayers who are going to pay a lot have a formal say on this. Okay, that's my whole spiel. I don't think anyone should be afraid of city taxpayers, city voters rather, kind of weighing in formally on their money. And I know some folks, you know, are not supportive of that. That's on them to explain to you why that is. Why someone would be okay signing you up for $489 million, but now does not want to give you a formal say in whether or not you actually want to do that. Okay, that's the whole spiel. So timeline is short. If folks remember though, when we discussed this last August, I did say from the dais that I will come back to my colleagues, I will ask that you consider letting city taxpayers vote on their money. So we are here. It didn't need to be a drawn out 6-month conversation, right? You know what you're gonna do on this. I think it's important though we do have a conversation about how we respect voters, how we respect taxpayers, given all that's going on. Okay, that's the spiel. That's the spiel. We have I'm sorry? That's it. We have so I've called a special meeting, and we are right now tentatively looking at Thursday afternoon to discuss this. So that's it. Well, I'll turn it over to questions.
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
So it is not a done deal from the last vote that we took because it was a county vote and not a city vote?
Thank you. So, correct. It's also not a done deal. We do not have a final term sheet. We do not have a final term sheet. Okay? The term sheet that we have is non-binding. Non-binding, yes. Non-binding.
I have a question.
Please.
So you say it was a county vote, not a city vote. I live in the city. I voted.
Yeah.
That's what I voted for. And I think one side lost, one side won. Why are we gonna redo this all over again? If we're gonna put things back on the ballot, that would be like someone telling you to go back on the ballot and see if you win a second time. I mean, it's the reality of it. I mean, and there's a lot of misinformation out there on y'all's end about where that money's coming from. Like, can that $489 million be used for anything other than projects downtown or the arena?
Let me answer that question. So, I want to go back to the point I made earlier. It's not a redo. The county's vote in November was the county's vote. It was $311 million. That was their vote. City voters have not formally had a vote on their money. I understand a city voter participated in a county election, and of course you would do that. That does not mean, and I don't know if anyone would assume, right, that just because you voted in the county's election, that you would similarly be okay with what the city has negotiated. I don't make that assumption. I let people vote on what they're voting on at the time and don't make assumptions there. To your point about can the $489 million be used on anything else? I have never said the $489 million could be used toward, for example, the deficit that we have. I have never said that. What I have said is neighbors raised concerns about our financial situation, which is true. $158 million, just to give everybody some context, where if you cut every library, if you eliminated all of animal care services, if you removed all of the money in the general fund for public health, you would still have to go find another $20 million. That's how significant it is. And that's why I'm not surprised when people are asking about, one, the deficit that we're in, the potential to need to raise property taxes in light of this, and are looking at about long-term investments, of course of which this is one, right? I think that's fair. One of the things, for example, on a TERS, I'm gonna get nerdy here for a little bit, but I think it's important if you wanna talk about the financing. So on the TERS, for example, Hemisphere TERS, how those things work, it's like you draw a little circle around an area, and a TERS is a tax increment, reinvestment zone. And so what happens in that area is as the value of that space increases, the property tax increases, it stays in there, and it helps to make modifications, okay? And so one of the things that is going to help pay for the arena is a TERS. And when you say, hey, that money can't be used for anything else, well, if that money doesn't stay in the TERS, you know where it goes? It goes into the general fund. You know what the general fund pays for? Cops, firefighters, senior centers, like the one that we're in, okay? So to say that it can't pay for anything else, it's just, there are other ways in which you could utilize those resources. And I think that's important. One thing You seem to be very familiar with the deal. So I'll put in context, the community benefits agreement, for example. Community benefits agreement, $75 million over 30 years. What does that break down to? It breaks down to $2.5 million a year, okay? You're sitting at a senior center. Every day in our community, weekday, we serve 2,400 meals to our seniors, about $587 a pop. You know how much that costs a year? $3.3 million. So we spend more per year feeding our seniors than we would on that community benefits agreement. Just to put it in context when we think about what we're getting. Another comparison, you know how much it costs to make a speed bump? $16,000. So 2.5 million, right? 2.5 million divided by 16,000, that's 156 speed bumps. 156 speed bumps divided by 10 council districts, that's 15 speed bumps a year for 30 years for $489 million. So I think it's important to know the numbers, and I'm glad that you know them, but it is, I think, helpful to just understand those things. And again, let people weigh in formally on whether or not that's something that they're up for, right? In light of other things that we might be investing in. Okay. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Christine Drennan.
I actually, because you brought up the community benefits agreement, I have a question about that. I know it's a little bit off, I do support you on the vote. And because you voted today about the community benefits agreement. And just looking at the 75 million, right, and wondering about the figure and where that may have come from. And doing a little bit of work. HEB contributes 5% of their pre-tax earnings to the community. Valero contributes about 2% of their pre-tax earnings back to the community. USAA, about 3.5%. The Spurs CBA, the Spurs Community Benefits Agreement contributes 0.6% of their pre-tax earnings, and that was 2025 figures. 2026 figures are well above 2025. And I just wonder, is there any possibility, now that we've got this committee of 33 people, send it back and renegotiate some of this and use some of these figures of these firms that are in the city that we're so proud of. Right, HEB that does so much in the community. And just say, if we're gonna do this, can we renegotiate and talk about real numbers?
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, if you remember a year ago, I asked for a strategic pause because I thought we were moving quickly. I thought there was still certainly some room to ask for things that the community rightly deserves. We had that term sheet for all of 96 hours, and folks wanted to vote on it. So I was outvoted, but look, we are where we are. To your point, I think there is room for improvement. I do want to address, there were some comments that were made by folks. You may have seen some of the videos. So I want to address them in case it's kind of top of mind. To your point, there are some comparisons with what's happening in other places. Someone was like, well, the Oklahoma City team, right? They're giving them $900 some odd million. Well, you know what the Oklahoma City voters did? They voted on that. And that's from sales tax. Okay, that's one. The other one, there was a comparison to what's going on in Portland, $600 million to renovate their arena. I've talked to that mayor. The city is on the hook for $120 million because half of that is being covered by the state, right? So $120 million is a lot different than what we're talking about here. So again, those are some recent things. I didn't know if anyone had seen those, and I wanted to make sure that we laid those flat. Yes, sir.
So speaking of misinformation, the $8 million that the PAC spent on the county vote, and they put out commercials saying the $311 million was going to help public safety. How that works is a mystery, but if we have another vote, the county did little to correct any kind of misinformation. Will the city do anything if we have this vote? Will the city do anything to correct the millions that the PACs are gonna spend, the Spurs PAC is gonna spend again against this?
Well, I think it's upon all of us to make sure we're ensuring that you have the appropriate information, right? And you certainly have my commitment to do that. There are, we, as elected officials, if something does make it on the ballot, and at this point it is an if, right, then we are precluded from advocating for something that is up for a vote like that. But certainly, a commitment to making sure people had all of the information to be informed is always my commitment. Yes, ma'am.
Of the $489 million that we don't put towards this, where does that money go? If we don't spend it for this, because that money is earmarked for this type of an arena. We lose that money, we lose it, period. So it's not gonna go to decrease our taxes or make sure that we don't have any property tax increase. What benefit do we see from that $489 million that we don't spend?
To be very clear, I'm not telling you how to vote. I think it's important that people have the opportunity to vote. As pointed out, folks would like more in the community benefits agreement. As mentioned, folks are really thinking about the economic environment that we're in, how we got to this position, and frankly, the decisions that have been made over time that have resulted in a $158 million deficit, the redevelopment that you don't see on the east side, which I think is fair to consider, and so forth. So I think I just want people to have the opportunity to vote. I am not scared of city voters kind of weighing in formally on their contribution. I think that's only fair. Yes?
On the infrastructure bond, is that firm or is that just a plug from air figure? Because a lot of that stuff gets thrown out. And early on, it was around that. Also, that $1.4 billion that the Spurs are donating, they're not donating any money. Isn't that based on that if we build this arena there, we're gonna have $1.4 billion of investment in this land with new businesses and all of that. Am I correct there?
So the first part was about the infrastructure deal. The infrastructure, I used the last number that we were provided. And this was provided in, I want to say, April of 2025 to the city council. That was the last firm number, which was the first infrastructure bond to support the downtown development. The range has always been 220 to 250 million, okay? That has not changed, and once it changes, then we can modify that. But it was also very clear, for the city manager, that is the first infrastructure bond. So we don't know, one, how many total there would be of that, but that is just the first one, okay? And that infrastructure bond amount is important because, as I mentioned, the bond capacity is significantly lower than what it's been previously. Even 2017 was 800 million, 2022 was 1.2 billion, and this one is going to be, we initially were thinking 600 million, it will be south of that. And so when you look at 600 million, we only, as you know, sir, we only do this every 5 years. So this is streets and sidewalks, this is parks, this is facilities, right, drainage. And so understanding that if your capacity is less than 600, and the last estimate that I have for downtown infrastructure to support the downtown development is almost half of that, I just want people, just to be very clear about what that is. Now in terms of so what has been put forth by the Spurs owners, that is, again, that commitment to do that, obviously we would work very hard to make sure we realize that. I think it is important though, as you have clearly read the numbers and others are also weighing, the recent experience, right, with Toyota Field and the difficulty of that. And I think both of these things are fair to weigh in terms of, hey, what is being put up this time, what those numbers are showing, as well as our recent experience with trying to collect on an outstanding payment.
You didn't answer her question when she asked about the money being earmarked. You said a bunch of big words, you said about, sorry, let me interrupt, but you said you didn't answer her question as far as if we don't use the money for that, it goes away.
That's not correct.
So
That's not correct. The PFZ, so for example, right, the project finance zone
That was set up by Texas law. Originally, the project finance zone only included 2 projects. Originally, it only included the Alamo Dome and the Convention Center, and then what that also does is help pay for some of the infrastructure around there, right? The law was changed so that that project finance zone could now also include the arena. That means that the sales tax from the hotels would now go pay for those 3 projects. So if voters said, we don't want to issue the $489 million worth of revenue bonds that would pay for this, that doesn't affect the PFC money in any way. You could still use it on the other projects that were identified there.
Can the state hold that back because we're not using the?
No, as I just said, you could still use it on the other things, on the other projects that were outlined in there.
But it can be used for the deficit.
I never said it could be.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's not what she said, and that's not what I've said. I've been very clear on what you can use it for. The statute, the state statute is very clear about the projects that it could apply to. Yeah. Is there a question back there that I missed? Yes, sir.
On the subject of the redo, a lot of hoopla. If you remember back in 2018, the citizens of San Antonio voted to limit city manager pay to 10 times the minimum pay. The city would not take no for an answer. 2024, there was a redo. It was on the ballot again. And now the city council has a blank check to do city manager pay, currently $500,000. So we've done redos before when it suited the city council and the city to do it. So let's not get all, wadded up about this redo. We have a right to go back and express what this is gonna be as citizens of San Antonio, not as citizens of Bexar County.
Yes, ma'am.
As a 4th generation San Antonian, I wanted to be here because I'm very skeptical after the promises made and promises broken from the Frost Bank Center, from the Alamo Dome. All of these term sheets and deals were made in back rooms without our taxpayer input. There should have been a strategic pause like the mayor called for. Instead, she was railroaded, and that didn't happen. We could have had more transparent information. We could have had an economic independent analysis done. But I'm very frustrated when I hear so many people pushing back against this vote for city dollars. This is not a redo. This is city taxpayers getting to decide what's fiscally responsible in the stewardship of our money. Thank you.
Let me go back to the point that Christine raised in terms of public oversight, which I think is a really important part. As has been mentioned at City Council, and I'm thankful for the folks that came to speak today, to include Kathleen Vale. There's a model that has worked well in our community. It's the oversight committee that was used for the river, right? The river project. That was in effect for 15, 16 years. And that included, that was a partnership between the River Authority, the county, and the city. And you had 2 chairs that were identified, one of them Lila Cockrell, the other one Mr. Hightower. And what they did is they had organizations selected that said, hey, these are folks, these are key stakeholders, and then those organizations are gonna have the opportunity to select who they help make sure that, the future of this is accounted for. And they worked by consensus, and many of those folks worked on that for like 15, 16 years. And so that is something that I think is worth exploring and coupling that with what we agreed upon today, which is kind of more citizen-oriented in terms of identified and nominated by the council members. I think it's an and piece to this. I think there's the model that the River Authority has, the River Oversight Committee, though, has used quite effectively, is something to consider. I think we all want to make sure there's sufficient public input in this, and people are able to inform all the other really critical actions that are going to be taken as it relates to that district. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was clapping because I agree with you, Mayor.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to having an oversight committee for that. Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back in the gray shirt.
So is this vote just a simple yes, no to the bond?
So the city attorney is going to have final say, right, on what the final language is, but in effect, it would be, yes, city voters, do you approve to the issuance of up to $489 million of revenue bonds, which would serve as the city's contribution to the Spurs Arena? That's essentially the effect of it.
Okay, because I think, there's a good opportunity here to actually address the deficit issue with the development, and that has to do with the negotiation of the terms, because it's difficult to say with the, evaluation that we have, it was done by, it was favorable to the development, that we could also have a more challenging evaluation and think of one as optimistic and the other as pessimistic, but neither of them really tell us what's gonna happen in the future, and we don't necessarily need to know what's gonna happen in the future, provided we structure the contract to benefit the city either way. And so what I would suggest then is that regarding the issue of the renovations that are anticipated between years in 13 to 15 year, that we arrange for some kind of agreement with the Spurs that they'll pay for part of, if not all of the renovations. And then also, we should set up an arrangement where we receive some portion of the arena revenues in the event that they overperform or they do very well. And that would allow us revenue to address the deficit issue and still give the city development and the Spurs new arena. And I think that would be better for everyone than simply having a vote that says yes or no to the money. Because it could go well and it could go bad, but it really has to do with how we organize it and how we handle it.
Thank you for those well thought out comments. I appreciate it, and that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be advocating for what our community deserves. I couldn't agree with you more. Certainly, you know, making sure the language of the contract is as strong as it needs to be. I mean, again, as we learned with the Toyota Field deal, right? There's the language in the contract. That's one piece of it. Hey, is one side going to comply with it? The other side that we've learned though is like, hey, are you going to enforce it? Right? That's a two-way street. I'm thankful that I raised that in January, and we finally resolved that, but that's something that should have been resolved a long time ago. Kathy Bale, please.
Hi, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that today is the 61st anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, signed into law by a Texas president, LBJ. And the Voting Rights Act has been a fundamental pillar of democracy for this entire country. So, people have very strong opinions all over this subject. But I just want everybody to think for a second, put your emotions aside, and ask yourself, why would anyone be opposed to giving us an opportunity to vote again?
That's right.
Who wants to who wants to hear somebody who lives in Terrell Hills, who lives in Alamo Heights, who lives in Almas Park, stand up and say, it's not a good idea for a second vote? As that person refers to our downtown. But he's not paying city taxes. That's not his downtown, that his property in Terrell Hills, Alamo Heights, Almas Park, and other ETJs that are not the city of San Antonio. So I just want to add that to the atmosphere, to keep in mind who wants to say it's not a good idea to let people vote. Because whatever the vote is, the vote will be, and that's it. And if there's enough, and just as a reminder, everyone's focused on the county vote. The county vote was approximately 52% of a very low county voter turnout.
Yes.
Christine, what was the turnout? About 10, 12%? So you do the math. Now if you take only the city boundary, the city vote was even less. About 51% of city residents voted in favor of Prop 2, Prop 8. I don't think anybody can call that a mandate.
Nope.
And a lot has happened since November of 2025. The value of our beloved Spurs, and I am a huge Spurs fan. I have my paper ticket stubs to a game in 1976. The first year the franchise started, I was in Incarnate Word High School, and I went with my friend, and I sat on the 4th row with the Iceman on the court. I have been a Spurs fan my entire life. You get to be a Spurs fan, at the same time, you get to ask tough questions. The two are not mutually exclusive. So everybody, keep in mind the power and the right of the vote that LBJ signed into law 61 years ago today. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I do, my AirPods fell, my AirPods fell.
More than 1/3 of Bexar County households are already housing cost burden. That means that they spend more than 30% of their income on housing expenses. How much of the proposed arena funding could ultimately increase the tax burden on residents, and how many housing cost burden households will be affected?
So that level of analysis doesn't yet exist, but when you're raising property taxes on folks, there's a big chunk of folks in our community that don't pay property taxes. You've got disabled veterans, we froze the property taxes for our seniors. So what you make a really good point, when we are raising the property tax increase, it's on the shoulders of a smaller and smaller group of people, but it's not insignificant in light of all of the other financial challenges I just discussed. And I think, when I hear from my neighbors about the anxiousness, frankly, around the finances right now, because you know what they're also watching? They're also watching that SAWS meeting where we're talking about a rate increase. They're listening to that CPS meeting where we're also looking at a potential rate increase. They're looking at the deficits in all the school districts. They're looking at, they just, again, raised the, it's funny, I was talking to a reporter the other day, and he said, the city hasn't raised property taxes in 30 years, but he said, but my property tax bill keeps going up and up. And I said, yeah, go look at the lines though. It's not the city, right? It's the healthcare, it's the school districts. So I think we're also just cognizant of all the other things that are happening in our community at the time that we would potentially be looking at some of these decisions. Because what do we know? SNAP enrollment in our community is already down. The effects of the One Big Beautiful Bill, right, at the federal level, we will see those. Cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, and SNAP. All of that will make it very difficult in our community. And I say that every month in our community, $50 million worth of SNAP benefits came in. $50 million. Now, I wish I had off the top of my head the number for Medicare and Medicaid and CHIP, but I just remember that SNAP, if you remember last November when they paused those, right? And thankfully the community was generous, and we were able to, and I was able to raise 1.6 million in just a couple of days. But those folks were really, really hurting. And so we're trying to think about all of this, right? And I understand that so when taxpayers and city voters raise this with me, I think it's fair to let them vote, not only in light of the plan having changed, but also the circumstances. The economic environment has changed, and I think it's fair to let folks in general just vote on their money, but certainly when there's been changes. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna dovetail on Kathleen a little bit and some of the things that were said already. I want to vote on this because I have not been asked, as a city resident, how do I want my money spent? I was there at city council when this vote was happening for the term sheet. The council received this term sheet from the Spurs late Monday afternoon, and they voted on Thursday. So here in District 7, was there any town hall? Was there any public thing to say, here's the agreement from the Spurs? Do you like it? What's good about it? Should we change it? We didn't get asked that question. I did not get asked that question. I went to council and I saw the 3 councilwomen who, I was sitting right in back of Peter Holt, and all the Spurs litany.
Greedy son of a bitch.
And we're not gonna be disgraceful, I love the
We're,
Spurs.
y'all,
but
we're gonna be, hold on, we're gonna be respectful.
Yeah, we're gonna be
please.
respectful,
Yeah.
but I'm an optics person that believes in process. Right there in front of me, they didn't recognize who I am, I don't care. So there was Phyllis Villadran, my councilwoman, District 7, and District 8, hugging and talking to the Sparrows congregation. So I knew where the vote was going. I did not get asked, none of us got asked, is this agreement good? Is this the best deal we could get for our city? And I don't think it is. And just think of this term, it says non-binding. It's not firm. So now, all the council, well, District 7, again, I live here, when we had town halls regarding, before the vote, it was no contrary person or discuss was gone to any, when she had coffees, no one from the opposing view was invited. We had one town hall before this vote. The rodeo man with the cowboy hat was there. Just Commissioner Justin Rodriguez was there. Of course, my councilwoman was there. No opposing view was given. The only opposing view was our questions. And I had several, and I had to write them in each individually. This term sheet today, I want to vote because I'm not agreeing with it because it's not the best deal we could get. Nowhere in this term sheet does it address parking. Nowhere. You build this arena, where are they gonna park? And even Eric Walsh, the city manager, said, oh, we're gonna have to get to that at one point. It is non-binding, it needs to be done now, not later. How is our money gonna be used? It is not a redo to me, it's like, ask me for the first time. Is this the best deal that we can get for our tax dollars? I believe in revenue sharing, because I want more revenue coming in. And when we go to a bond, as minimal as we're gonna get this time from all the bonds we've ever had, I don't want one penny going there. It should go to our own drainage, that we don't have enough money, for our sidewalks, for the things that we live in. I'm not going downtown. I'm living in my district where we might have flooding, we don't have enough streets, forget the humps, we can't get enough, the speed humps and everything. For me, ladies and gentlemen, I want my voice finally asked. How do you believe this deal? And to me, it's not saying yes or no and just the money. I just want the process. And if we had the opportunity, I know my councilwoman is not gonna vote for this, so my voice is here tonight. So, if we could get a better deal, then our voices are fine. Then we can go back, they can go back to the drawing board and said, give us another deal. Here it is.
Thank you. You know, as the mayor, I think about not only what we're dealing with, but Elena's comments made me think of, I think the responsibility that I have to whoever the future mayors are, right down the line. Because what I'm dealing with is what the decisions of previous mayors. And one of the things that is top of mind for me is the way in which our deficit has grown. When you look at our 5-year outlook, they just got in the budget, right? When you look at our 5-year outlook, if we don't do anything, our 5-year deficit grows to $264 million by 2031. When we did this exercise last year, that deficit was $224 million. So in 1 year, our 5-year out-year deficit growth increased by 17%. That is unsustainable. And so the other thing that is kind of top of mind for me as well is the governor's recent announcement that he wants to go after CPS. Y'all know how important CPS is to the general fund? A third of that general fund comes from property tax, right? A little bit less than that comes from sales tax. A third of that also, just because sales tax and property tax are down though, you know who the #1 contributor to our general fund is right now? CPS. To give you some context, just the June contribution to the general fund was just shy of $38 million. So when we talk about how do we help ourselves, all the more we need to be asking now, right, to protect ourselves. So I agree that I've asked for revenue sharing. It's only fair. I was talking to a friend of mine I went to middle school with. She's like, revenue sharing, what does that mean? It means when they eat, we eat. Same. That's what that means. And so I think, because 2.5, that is small. And we're not gonna have an opportunity to kind of go back after the fact. I mean, look how hard it was to get the MLS money. Be serious. And so I think what's important is we think about all of these decisions, what is potentially coming our way. And I would like nothing more than the mayor in the future years to be cashing that revenue sharing check. Like, thank goodness the mayor back then did that. My goodness. Right, now is the time to get that insurance policy. And I think it's fair. Yes?
So I think I probably agree with a lot of folks that are here and seeing the value of everybody maybe voting on this item. My concern is that from looking at one of your colleagues on TV the other night, she made it sound like there was not gonna be enough votes for that. Is this something that's basically gonna result it being voted on by the city council? And do we have any way, or what input do we have, if any, if there's not the votes there to make this happen? Because I think it should happen, but are we fighting an uphill battle, I guess, is my question.
Are there any other kind of battles? So process-wise, you're correct. In order for city voters to have a vote in November, the city council has to pass an ordinance by the 17th. We need 6 votes to do that. Now, my council colleague, I think, look, I think you go to the end, right? I think you give folks the opportunity to do the right thing up until the last minute. I hope somebody goes to mass on Sunday, hears the homily, and says, you know what? I gotta let my people vote. So we give people as much time as possible, I think, to do the right thing.
So should we be calling our city council?
Absolutely, yes ma'am, you should be. Let them know. Like, it's so funny, I was talking to one of my staff earlier, Daniel, and we were sitting there about kind of how we're gonna do this over the next couple of days, and he just kind of looked back and he said, this is just democracy. This is just democracy, right? And so don't feel disenfranchised. Don't feel discouraged. I have hope that some of my colleagues will come around and see that city taxpayers deserve to vote on city money. So yes, please call your council person, DM them, tag them on all your social media, let them know how you feel. That's their job. Yes, sir.
But if they don't come around?
If they don't come around, if we do not have 6, if we don't, to your point, to be very clear, if we're not able to pass an ordinance by the 17th, then you will not vote on your city contribution. Period.
But is there a backup plan of
There
any
is
sorts
not.
for
No,
anybody else to have a voice?
there is not. And you will, if we're not able to pass this ordinance by the 17th, of course I will not be raising this again, because we are anticipated to finalize the term sheet by the end of the year. And so that, in my mind, has also always been the benefit of having a vote in November, is that the taxpayers, the voters, are able to see clearly what has been negotiated on their behalf, and the opportunity to say yes or no, I want that, right?
Can I also encourage people to please go on that Nextdoor app and put on there all of the reasons why we should have this vote in November? Because people are confused, and they need to understand that Alamo Heights, Aldous Park, and Terrell Hills aren't paying for this. We are. Thank you.
They'll pay for the $311 million, right, because they're county voters, but for the $489 million contribution, they will not, and for the infrastructure bonds, they will not. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I make a comment on, people always say about the poor get poor and the rich get richer. This is one good way they do that, because the burden falls on the poorer, and the gain goes to the richer. I mean, the average person in San Antonio will never be able to afford to go to one of those games, and that bothers me. This is not, we get bragging rights or something. I don't know what you get for your money. But the other thing I was going to say, I gained a lot of respect for you last year. I went and talked in front of the council, but you stood up. You're the only one that was trying to stop this thing, and you took a lot of personal heat because of it. They tried to smear you, and I was watching this. I wasn't your biggest fan to start with, but I've gained a lot of respect for you. I mean, seriously. I mean, you've done a great job in this department for sure. And also, I see things going about with petitions and things like that. There's no. He was talking about a backup plan. There's no petition that could force this thing to the ballot. I mean,
No, there's not. You have to pass an ordinance.
Okay, so the ordinance has to be there.
In order to do this, that's right, yeah.
As I said, I thank you for your effort.
I appreciate that, thank you. And, when you're fighting for the right thing, you think, you're gonna take some hits on the chin, and that's okay. At the end of the day, I sleep well, I can look in the mirror and say I am doing right by the people of San Antonio. Yes, ma'am.
I just moved here in 2010 after I retired from the military. So I wasn't here when they did the Alamo Dome. I wasn't here when they did the AT&T, now Frost Center. I know I'm reading in the paper about a lot of things that was promised during the AT&T Center was not done, was not given back to the city in money or in things in the east area. I've only been to AT&T Center twice since I've been here. I've been to the Alamo Dome probably about 5 times, and Freeman Center 1, so I don't go there. So it's not, if they move it downtown, I think that's the worst place to do it, because we're always under construction. You have no parking. Last week at the event center, there was a thing for women veterans. I purposely did not go because of the parking. So I didn't see it benefited me. Now, I see them talking about raising taxes and talking about the different bonds. What I've seen is y'all put everything in the bond, and you're voting about 10 different things and 10 different things in there. I think it was May of 2023, we had 6 different bonds about different things for the city. And they each had legitimate stuff, but they were also, as I went on the city website, art was plugged in to each one of them when they had their own. I voted no on practically 50%. I pretty much voted 99% no on a lot of the bonds because of all the pork put in. It's ridiculous. And like the gentleman said, if I wanted to, I couldn't afford a Spurs ticket. If the Spurs wants this so bad, they'd pay for it. I'm tired of trying to supplement somebody else. I know you just talked about the CPS with what Abbott said. I'm one of those, I want a choice. Because I'm tired of having to pay rates. My bill, I think for AC for last month was $400. Damn. And I didn't change anything. My subdivision constantly has outages during storms. This last storm that we had in July, we went 6 days with rain. I got 12 inches at my location. Old Grissom is down the street. That floods constantly. It has not been fixed. You had it destroyed. Last June, we had that flood, where we had the flooding at Pier Bryan, and those people died. None of that's been fixed. I wanna see my money going to fixing that stuff, and then instead of a sporting event. You talked about the
I
schools.
appreciate, yeah, I wanna make sure we included some other comments, but I wanna, yeah, if you.
I just
wrap
want
it
to
up.
say
We're
that.
subsidizing
Talk about the
billionaires.
schools. We keep putting all this stuff in the
Subsidizing
schools, but we're not getting the outcome. And we're building stadiums, we're building all this other stuff, and we're taking away what's the basics. We need to go back to the basics. If we can't take care of this stuff, I don't wanna be in debt. Like you were saying, how far we're in debt. We've gotta start thinking about this
Yeah.
and put this to the vote.
I agree, yeah, I think,
I mean, they're 6-time billionaires and we're subsidizing their bullshit arena. I mean, what the fuck?
okay. All right, let
I
me,
mean,
let
why
me,
isn't everybody pissed that the Spurs got lied to, the Spurs organization lied to the people of San Antonio? They fucking lied to each and every one of you.
all right.
Lady, drop
And
the
they-
mic.
it's
Drop
like,
it.
are they scared?
Make your point.
Are your colleagues scared that if they actually let the people of San Antonio that are now learning about the lies of Peter Holt and Buford and all those assholes, are they scared that if they let the people of San Antonio vote again, that the No Project Marvel people are gonna this time win, cause it came so close to losing the county election?
I can't speak
Is
for
that
my,
what it is?
I can't speak for my colleagues, but
It's
I
corruption.
do not believe that, we should be scared of city
The
voters.
corruption is so thick.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with a lot of, that has been spoken here. In fact, I had 3 pages worth, but I think everybody else.
I remember you, yes.
Everybody else said, I was there with Elena that day.
I remember.
When they came with cowboy boots. Yeah, and the fact that they used $8 million to come that close to winning. And
Cost of the campaign.
the cost of the campaign, $8 million to fool the people with a lot of half lies. And since everything has been said, or maybe just a few more things, I did want to say that everywhere that I go, and I always speak out, I believe that the silent majority of San Antonio have awoken. And I want to thank you for doing this, Mayor. I didn't vote for you the first time, but believe me, you run again, you're in.
Thank you.
The silent majority.
We've got, time for one more question. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing out there? Hey there. Question was, do you know the number of how much it would cost to do this standalone, vote in November for this?
Yeah, just a little bit more money than we give to the San Antonio Botanical Garden every year. That was a joke, come on. So, the estimate is about 1.5 million. That's what the city clerk has estimated. 1.5 million though. It's anticipated we will have, the extension of pre-K for SA on the ballot already. As well as, we haven't talked about it tonight, I'm happy to stick around if folks do wanna talk about it. I think we should, redirect, the ready to work money into things that can be paid for out of the general fund, and then that general fund money goes toward core services. So, there could be, several other things already on the ballot that you split the cost with. Obviously, the benefit of November, of course, which is why we moved the municipal election from May to November, is that you, have the highest turnout. Right, that's when people are thinking about voting. But I think most importantly, we want to hear from folks on this, and this is their money. 1.5 million to hear from the community on their $489 million contribution, I think is worth it. All right, y'all, look, let me say thank you. Thank you.